Mm-hmm.
Good, good, good. Okay, so we're going to get started. In the meantime, uh, if you have any questions or anything, just feel free to write them down, and then I can answer them at the end.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so hi everyone. Hopefully you're all doing well. What I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk to you guys about the 3 myths of getting a 4.0 grade point average. Now, the reason I wanted to mention this and the reason why I call them myths is because I noticed that this happened a while ago, and it was really interesting. So what I used to do, and for some of you who are watching this, you may already know that back when I first started, I used to have these in-person classes, and I used to call them academic excellence boot camps. And what I used to do is I used to put up posters, and the poster said something like, do you want to get a 4.0 GPA? Or something like how to get a 4.0 GPA. And so what happened was I would put up these posters, and then I would hear students, they didn't know that I was the one that put up the poster because I had just moved on. So I'd be walking back and I would hear students say things like, getting a 4.0, that's not possible. Hi, Fazila, how are you? So I would hear students say like, that's not possible. You can't get a 4.0. Or students would say things like, as if, some students even said, oh, it's a scam. There's no way you can get a 4.0 grade point average. And so I started thinking, because I'm like, why would somebody say that? And I started thinking that the reason why is because their perception is very different from my perception that I had when I was actually doing these programs. But I could actually understand why they were saying what they were saying. And the reason why is because they actually had a very different mindset. And I had the same mindset when I was young. And when I was 18 years old and barely getting 70% in my classes, if somebody told me I could get a 4.0 grade point average, I would probably laugh in their face and be like, there's no way I can do it. So I would probably have said the same thing that these students were saying. And what I think most students think, and I have to go back in my mind in terms of what I was thinking when I wasn't doing well in school. I think what most students think is that it's impossible to get a 4.0 grade point average because they're not smart enough. They have to it's too much work. So they have to actually make too many sacrifices for them to do well in school. And it's almost like they have to give up everything to get that 4.0. And if they decide to get a 4.0, then they'll have to like give up the things that they love and make all these sacrifices. And even, for example, have no social life. And even things like maybe they have also a belief that they have to have an amazing level of intelligence to get a 4.0 grade point average. So I realize that this is kind of what's going on with most students. And the reason I'm saying this is because I deal with a lot of students every year. And I probably deal with, on average, maybe 200 students every semester. So I'm realizing that this is actually very common in the psyche of most students. And so what's really important to understand is that they have already lost the battle before it's even started, because they're going into school already with these concepts like it's too hard, it's too difficult, I'm not smart enough. What is it? I have to make too many sacrifices. There's too much work. I don't want to give up my social life. So they're already going into classes with that mentality. And when they go in with that mentality, they've already lost. So it's almost like they've actually given up before, the courses have even started. And the reason I say this is because a lot of these students come into the first semester or the first year, and they're already very intimidated. They're already very scared. They're already very nervous. And they haven't even taken a course yet. So why would they get nervous? And it's because they're already anticipating that things are going to get bad. They're already anticipating that things aren't going to go so well. Because if they weren't anticipating, then wouldn't they be more excited? Wouldn't they be more like upbeat? Wouldn't they be like looking forward to it? And I'm not saying all students are feeling intimidated. Some students are actually really excited. So you can tell right away that their mindset is a lot is a lot different. So what I thought I would do here is just let you know that if that's how you're thinking, it's already going to be very difficult for you to get that 4.0. So what you want to do here is you want to understand that it's the thinking that's actually getting in the way and not the actual course. I'm going to repeat that. It's the thinking and the beliefs that are the real problem and not the actual courses you're taking. The problem is it seems like it's the courses because as you're doing the courses, your mindset is influencing you while you're doing the course. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So what I thought I would do here is I would talk about these myths. And when I talk about myths, really what I'm talking about is that a myth is defined as a widely held belief or idea which is false. Okay, that's the definition of a myth, that it's a belief or an idea that's actually false, but people believe them. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 myths that I think stop students from getting that 4.0 grade point average. So the first one is that students feel that they need to be very smart and very intelligent to get a 4.0. Now, I believe this one too. And I can tell you, I'm actually not that, like I'm average when it comes to school. I'm actually not that smart. But when it came to doing well in school, I believed that I had to be at a different level of intelligence and I had to be really, really smart. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because if you have that belief that you have to be exceptionally smart, that indirectly means that you don't actually think you're at that level. And so what happens is that, in my opinion, this is actually the biggest myth out there. Okay. And because of this myth, smart students who are already quite capable and they can actually do well in school, they don't believe they can because they think they need to be at another level. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So what ends up happening is that they kind of actually feel that they're just not capable. So the reason for this is because their mindset is incorrect. So many of these people, they probably have a mindset, and if you ever read Carol Dweck's book Mindset, or if you ever studied her material, she calls this a fixed mindset. And basically what this means is that students or people just have a limited view of their capability. And they, for example, think of a light switch, right? Like either it's on or it's off. So in other words, either you're dumb or you're really smart. It's like all or nothing thinking. Another reason why it's a myth when you think you have to be really smart to be successful is because the reality is that you don't have to be that bright. You just have to do a whole bunch of things well. Okay, so but the people who think that they have to be really smart, they also experience something called hubris. So hubris is really the attitude that they are superior than other people. So these type of students, they may have done well in high school and they've done really, really well without trying. So now what's happened is they've developed a fixed mindset and they've developed this thing called hubris, which means that they are just a natural talent and they don't need to work hard. Okay, they just have this thing where this is my thing and I don't need to work hard. It just kind of comes to me. Now, a lot of students who are very intelligent, they have this. And so when they have this, what ends up happening is they're more intelligent in looking smart than they are in developing their skills. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. They're more intelligent in looking smart than they are in developing their skills. So what happens is they always plateau. And they actually look at working hard and developing their skills almost as if it's an insult, because they shouldn't have to work hard because they are smart. So that type of attitude kind of gets in their way. And so their talent may have been enough for them when they were younger, but now all of a sudden when you're at the post-secondary level, it doesn't work anymore. And so they've never had practice like having to learn and train themselves to get better because things have always come to them quite easily. And a lot of these people who believe that they have to be smart, and a lot of smart people who fail at the post-secondary level, or a lot of smart people who actually don't do as well as they want, a lot of these individuals, they've already made up their mind that they're not like that they can only do a certain level. They've already made up their mind. And so what happens is they don't become very coachable. So when you're trying to explain to them a new concept, or you're trying to explain to them a new way of looking at something, they just reject it because they're like, no, that's just not how I function, or that's not how I work. But what they don't understand is that how you used to do things can always be developed, and you can always learn more. But they're not capable of actually accepting that because they did well in the past. So now all of a sudden, if you tell them that, hey, you could actually work harder, or you could actually spend more energy doing something different, it's almost like it's a shaft against them. It's almost like it's insulting. Okay. And it's because they've relied on their talent in the past. Okay. And I call it the I know it. No, what do I call it? I call this the I know that trap. So I call it the I know that trap. Basically, what this means is that when you tell somebody something, they're like, I know that. And you're like, hey, how about this? And like, yeah, I already know that. Yeah, I already know that. And so there's a lot of people like that. And when you say, I already know that, what they've done is they just shut it down. So they can't, no new information or no new perspectives will go into their mind. So what happens is they shut down and they can't develop that skill. So it's not really that they're not capable, but their mindset has just stopped them from getting new information. Okay. On the other hand, there are students who are not very smart, who are not that intelligent, but I see them with my own eyes getting 4.0 semester after semester. And so you might ask, well, how can I tell if somebody's intelligent, and how can I tell if somebody's not intelligent? And so the reason I can tell is really by asking them through conversations. So for example, I'll talk to a student who I believe is very intelligent, and I'll speak to them, and they're just giving me very good responses, and they're very well thought out. They're very there's so much clarity in their thinking, and you can tell that they get the concept. The problem is they won't sometimes be humble enough to try to learn a new way of doing something. So this is how I can tell, in case you're interested. And then there's individuals, when you talk to them, actually, you can tell they're not always the most intelligent person in the room, but they do so well on tests and exams. So like, well, how does that translate? And the way it translates is that these people have what you call a growth mindset. So growth mindset is really a different way of looking at something. So they look at something and they're humble enough that they're like, yeah, I'm not the smartest, but there's always something I can learn. So they have that humility built in. And every time they make a mistake or they fail, it's like, okay, I failed and I made a mistake, but that's actually a good thing because now I've just got some information of what I need to fix for next time. Whereas the other person who has hubris is like, I failed or I made a mistake, but it's not because of me. It's because the system is wrong, or the professor's no good, or the textbook is too complicated, or it's too boring. The course is too boring. So if you ever hear yourself say that, like, it's the professor sucks, or the course is boring, or the textbook is what that means is that you've got hubris, which means you're not open enough to understand that there's something you need to fix. Okay. Whereas if you have that growth mindset, even if the professor's boring, even if the textbook sucks, or even if, the material isn't interesting, you're still looking at the situation. You're like, okay, well, how can I adjust and how can I adapt to make sure I can get the most out of the information that's available to me? So I thought this is really important. And people who have a growth mindset, they can actually end up succeeding in the long term. It may take them a bit of time, but they actually can succeed in the long term. And they know that every failure is one step closer to success. And they know that there's always more to learn. Okay, so I thought that was really important to be able to distinguish between the two type of individuals. And then here's a second myth. The next myth is that some people believe that in order to do well and to get a 4.0, you need to have a really good memory. So you have to really have a good memory and remember stuff. Now, I think that this is actually false, and I'll give you an example. It's like saying that this person is a good athlete because they're very coordinated, and that's why they're a good athlete. So it sounds legit, but the problem is that that athlete, if they stop practicing, they're not going to be a good athlete anymore, right? They're not going to be a good athlete anymore. So they may be blessed with good coordination, but if they don't consistently work at it and refine their athleticism, they eventually will not be a good athlete. So that's very similar to our memory, because our memory is like our memory, or our mind or our brain is like a muscle. So you need to understand that you can always develop that muscle. Okay, so but you need to practice. So just like you could practice a sport over and over again, you can actually practice how to memorize and learn things by learning to train your mind in a more effective way. And if you doubt that, then just think about the top athletes and think about why is it that they still practice almost every day? If they're so good, why do they keep practicing? Well, they keep practicing because they know that they need to keep up with the practice. Otherwise, their skill level is going to go down. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to learning and using your memory. Okay. And this is why they say, and it just came to mind right now, this is why they say that when you retire, when somebody retires, and I know you guys are far from retirement, but when you retire, you should always keep your mind active. The reason being is because if you don't keep your mind active after you retire, then you're going to lose, in a way, you're going to actually lose your mind, right? So you're not going to be as sharp as you once were. So this is why it's very important to understand that if you're not using your mind on a regular basis, you're actually going to lose some of your memory and you're going to lose some of the insight. And this is why people forget a lot of things. So it's really interesting is because my memory now at the age that I'm at is a lot sharper now than it was when I was in my 20s, which doesn't make sense. But it does if you actually understand that I'm using my mind way more now than I ever did in my 20s. And because of that, I'm remembering things. Like I had a conversation, I coach a student and he's only 13 years old. And he was talking to me about the fact that he's studying the heart. And it was really interesting. I was like, oh yeah, the heart, it's your right ventricle, your aorta, your left ventricle, your pulmonary vein. And I just remember that I learned that in grade 7. How did I remember that? And the way I remembered it was because I'm consistently learning, I'm consistently reading, I'm consistently trying to put new information in my mind. And now all of a sudden I'm like remembering things from when I was in grade 7. I think I must have been, I don't know, 13, 14 or something. So it actually scared me that I could remember that. But I understand why. It's because I'm actually using my mind on a regular basis. It's like going to the gym every day and you're building that muscle. So I thought that was really good. A good thing to share with you. So if you have a weak memory, all you got to do is start practicing it. So let's think of a weak muscle, right? Just keep practicing it. Okay. Keep using it. If you have small biceps, we'll keep doing more curls and eventually you build the biceps. Okay. So another thing here is that another myth is that most people think that in order to get a 4.0 grade point average, you need to study more. Okay, you need to study more. And they have this attitude that more is better. So the more you study, the better you'll do. But here's something that's going to blow your mind. And I know when I share this with people, the students are going to be really happy, but the parents are going to be like, what is he telling them? So what I'm telling them is that, listen, it's not about studying more. So parents, please forgive me, because your child is probably going to say, see mom, or see dad, I don't have to study as much as I normally do. But listen to me as I say this, okay? It's not about studying more, okay? What it's really about is changing your behaviors. So to get better grades is not about doing more. It's about actually changing your behaviors to be more effective, okay? I want to repeat that. To do better in school, it's not about studying more. It's about changing your behaviors to be more effective. So I'm going to give you some examples. So you could be studying more, but what if you never attended your classes? What good is all that studying? Because if you never went to class, you never know what was on the exam. But if you just changed your behavior and you were more consistent by going to class, then all of a sudden the studying becomes more effective and you can actually study less, right? But you have to study based on your behaviors that you had. Okay, so that's an example. What happens if you don't do your readings and you're not consistent with your readings? Then all of a sudden, that lack of consistency, which is behavior change, all of a sudden makes your studying 10 times more difficult, because now you've just forgotten what was discussed. But if you were consistent and you had a better routine, all of a sudden now the readings become easy. What if you never actually followed a schedule and you didn't plan your days. Well, if you didn't plan your days, then you would always be anxious because you wouldn't know what's due. Now, all of a sudden, studying becomes difficult. So really, it's not really an intellectual exercise. It's more of a physical exercise. It's more of a physical problem where you have to actually change your behaviors to do better. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So what I want to do is I want to kind of give you some next steps. Okay, so here's some steps that I think are going to help you. And the one thing that I also tried to do, and I'm changing this up a little bit, is I know a few people watch this, and it's really cool because I'll do this talk and I'll see a few people on, then I'll go back and I'll see like 20 people watched it. So I know people watch this, which is good, and I appreciate that you guys watch this. But I thought what would be really good is if I can actually have more interaction with you. And the reason for this is because by me having this interaction, I can actually help pinpoint you in the areas that can be beneficial. So if you're somebody who's actually working hard, but you're not getting the results that you want, what's probably happening is that you believe these myths that I just talked about. You probably believe them. And if you believe them, then you're actually in the majority. Okay, so 95% or more probably believe this stuff. But if you actually look at the students who find school easy, they're like, no, I don't believe that. That's not true. But what's really weird is that the 95% who are in school, they actually believe these myths. And it's really interesting. So there's a good chance that you believe these myths, and that's why you're struggling. So what you really need to do is you actually need to find a way to unlearn this stuff. Okay, I can tell you intellectually, but deep down you might still feel that what Aleem is saying, it sounds good and it makes sense, but I actually don't believe it. So unless you let go and you unlearn it, then it's not going to result in any benefit. And here's where it gets interesting. And that is, it's more powerful. I mean, I want to say this properly. To be successful academically, in my opinion, it's more effective if you unlearn stuff than learn stuff. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again. To be effective academically, it's more important that you unlearn stuff than learn more stuff. And so the reason I'm saying that unlearning is more powerful is because a lot of us have been taught very old ways and very outdated ways of learning. I'll give you an example. Most students have been taught if you work very hard, you'll be successful academically. But let me ask you a question. What if you're working hard at doing the wrong thing? Is all that hard work going to help you? Like think of I was just had a meeting with a really good hockey player today. And just think about it. This guy wants to become a better hockey player. Would he be shooting basketball hoops all day long? But he would be working hard at shooting. Like if he gets up every morning and for 8 hours a day, he's shooting hoops, is he working hard? He is working hard, right? But is he working hard in the right area? No. If he wants to be a better hockey player, he's got to take more slap shots. He's got to work on his skating. He's got to maybe work on stick handling. He's got to maybe practice raising the puck, deking around other people, all that kind of stuff. So it's not about working hard. It's about working hard in the right areas. Okay, so a lot of people don't realize that. So they try to learn everything. And that's really where they feel overwhelmed. And then if you feel overwhelmed, your brain kind of shuts down and it doesn't really help you. So what I thought I would do is I would kind of work with you and help you to unlearn some of these things and get rid of some of these myths. But the way I can do this is only if you're somebody who's very motivated and very coachable. Okay. And you also have to be willing to make a commitment. So if you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to have a meeting with you and it's going to be a one-off, then I don't think it's a good idea that we meet. But if you're somebody who's like, you know what, I want to make a commitment and I want to do what I can to be successful, and I'm willing to actually discipline myself to do something different, then I'd love to chat with you. Now, if that's what you're interested in, then I'm going to actually put a link for my calendar below, and then you can book a time to chat with me. And if you've already worked with me and if you've already been a student of mine, then that's good because now you have a good foundation, and then we can work at getting you to the next level. Okay. So that's something that we can also look at as well. So for example, you may be a student who's doing quite well in school, and I work with a lot of students already at the 90+ level. And sometimes I'm confused. I'm like, you're already at a 90. Why do you want to work with me? Then I realize the reason why they want to work with me is because they're so stressed. They're so like feeling so much pressure, and they don't have enough time to have a balanced life. So then I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. So then maybe that's something you need help with. Or maybe you're on academic probation and you're so driven and you're so motivated, but you don't know what to do to get to the next level. So we can have a little discussion about that. Okay. So the key here though is that I'm only going to be taking maybe five or six bookings this month. That's it. And the reason being is because my commitments are quite high. Okay. So I don't think I can do more than 5 or 6. And lastly, the reason I want to do this is because the bottom line is that you may think you can do this alone by putting in more time and effort. But the problem is that if you're doing this alone, that also means you're using the same brain that you used to create the problem. So it's kind of weird, but Einstein said that you can never solve a problem using the same mind that created it. So if you're trying to do this alone, you're using the same mind that actually created the problem. So what you really need to do is you need to actually use another mind to help you solve the problem. So this is why I'm actually offering this opportunity this month. When I say this month, I'm talking about February, and maybe I think we got a couple of days left in January, so we'll go to February. And if you think, like I said, if you think you can do this alone, it's gonna be very difficult, because the only way I got myself out of my situation was I was really blessed with having some good. But actually with having a good mother, because my mother never let me quit. And then on top of that, I actually had a really good book that helped me understand that my thinking was all wrong. And then when I had those things, I realized that I had that other perspective, and that other perspective helped me solve my problem. But I had to use the minds of other people. I had to use the minds of experts to help me get out of the situation. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And I'll put the booking in the comments section below. So I just want to summarize in terms of what we talked about. So first thing is getting a 4.0 GPA. It's not about working harder. It's not about working harder. It's about working in the right areas. Okay. It's not about being much more intelligent or smart than the average person, because this person who's really smart and intelligent, they have an issue of having hubris and being uncoachable. So they actually have to unlearn what they actually thought about themselves in order to get better. So if you're actually someone who thinks you're smart and you're intelligent, you actually have a worse problem than somebody who is maybe an average student, because the average student already knows that they're not as intelligent, or they're not getting the results that they want. So they already know that. And then they're looking for new information to help them. Whereas if you think you're very intelligent, very smart, and you're not getting the results, you actually have to unlearn some stuff that's actually getting in your way to do better. So hopefully that makes sense. And it's not about making crazy sacrifices, because I can honestly tell you that when I was able to get my 4.0, I actually had more of a balanced lifestyle than I did when I was failing. And the reason being is because that balanced lifestyle is what allows your mind to rest and relax. And then when your mind is rested and relaxed, that's when it starts to be more like a sponge, and you can actually learn at a better rate. It's not about sacrificing and having no social life, okay? Because that social life is actually part of helping you relax and become a higher performer as well, okay? And you're not, and we talked about the level of intelligence. Sometimes being blessed with an amazing level of intelligence is actually a curse more than a benefit. And I'm telling you this, and it sounds weird, but I'm telling you this that as a fact, because I actually know people who believe they're so intelligent, but they just can't get anywhere in life. It's because they think that their intelligence is actually more of a curse than a benefit. And that is a really messed up situation, because they think they're too smart to listen to anyone. What they really need to do is be more humble and realize they don't have all the answers. And now that's a tough one, especially if you've always been told how intelligent you are. So you actually have to let go of that type of thinking, and you actually have to unlearn some of that stuff. And that's a real shot to your ego when all of a sudden you're like, damn, I'm not as intelligent as I thought I was. And that's a shot to your ego. And then how do you know you're one of those people? You know by the results around you. If you're not getting the results that you want, well, really, how smart are you? Because if you were smart, you would actually be getting those results, wouldn't you? So this is important to understand. Okay. So really, you need to adopt a better mindset, better way of thinking. You need to actually learn to train your mind in a very different way. But unfortunately, most schools today don't actually help you train your mind. They just tell you, they teach you what to learn. They don't teach you how to learn it. Okay. And you got to actually change your behaviors in a more effective way. Okay. And then lastly, it's very difficult to succeed alone. So that's why I'm here to help. Okay. So if that's something you're interested in, then you can click on an appointment and we can chat. Okay. So that's it for today. Hopefully this was fruitful for all of you. And it's 6:33, so I'm a few minutes over, but I will take any questions if you have any. If you don't, that's cool too. So I'll just give you guys a minute. And you know what? I'm just going to go on Facebook right now. And I know there's a bit of a delay. I just want to see if there's any questions on the Facebook Live. If there is, then I'll just answer them. If not, then that's okay too. Let me just see. Yeah, don't think there is, but I'll just give it a second. Okay, Fazila, your hand is up. How's it going?
Good, thanks.
By the way, I have, before you say anything, I have to commend you that you are my most loyal follower. You're like always there, and if you can't make it, you tell me that you can't make it, and I just want to tell you I appreciate it, and I appreciate your loyalty, and I appreciate your support at the same time. So just want to tell you, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Liam. Well, I think the content is great, so I enjoy attending this. I'm wondering, you had mentioned that you had coached someone who was 13. So can you tell us a bit more about the age ranges that you coach, or what you look for when you are accepting clients?
Yeah, really good question. So what I look for when I work with clients is I don't really care about the grades that they're getting. Like, it doesn't matter to me what grades they're getting, because I know that there's individuals who are very motivated and driven, but they're not doing well in school. And unfortunately, it's very difficult, because I was one of those people, and you're evaluated on your results. And I don't believe in that. I think as results come from doing a whole bunch of stuff. So what I really do is I focus on individuals who have certain qualities about them, so certain characteristics. So the characteristics that I look for, I do look at age a little bit. Like, I won't work with an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, not because they probably couldn't do well, not because of that. It's because there has to be a certain level of maturity. So, for example, I am working with I think a 13-year-old, but he's at a very high level of maturity, and it was really surprising to see this individual really have the drive and the determination to want to do better. Okay, so I'm like, okay, let's give him a chance. And let me tell you, he's one of my star students. So maturity is one factor. Okay, and what I mean by maturity is the ability to understand that there's always a next level. There's a deeper level of doing things. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing is that the person has to be coachable. So if the person has this idea of like, yeah, I already know that, or this is too simple, or, I'm not, this is too basic for me. I'm much smarter than that. Now, if that's how you're thinking, then it's probably not going to be a good fit, because then everything that we discuss, you'll probably be kind of dismissing it and rejecting it. And the only way it's going to happen is if somebody tries to convince you or prove to you. And that's okay. But the point is that if you're not getting the results that you want, then that should be proof right there that you're not as smart or as intelligent as you think you are, because the results, if you were smart or intelligent, the results would be there. So there's obviously something you're doing wrong. So you got to be coachable. And the other thing is motivation levels. the motivation levels have to be really high. So there was a parent the other day that wanted me to work with their kid. And I asked the kid, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of motivation? And the student said, well, it's not that high. So I said, okay, that's fair. And so maybe it's not a good fit for us, because if the motivation isn't really high, then there's a good chance that the student isn't going to do the assignments. They're not going to do the homework. They're not going to be, they may not even show up on the calls, right? And then it's a waste of time for everyone. So hopefully that answers your question. So certain level of maturity, commitment, coachable, and being highly motivated. Those are the things. And the results, in my opinion, will come when you have those qualities, because when you have those qualities, that's like you're primed and you're ready to go to the next level. That's how I see it. And age is not too much of a factor, but I've kind of narrowed my work to grade 12 and university levels. The only reason is because that's the highest leveraging point in the lives of most people. So what I mean by leveraging point is that's the point where if they really kill it, they really do well, then they reap a lot of benefit. Because if you do really well in grade 12, all of a sudden you get like all these opportunities to get to these top universities, and you even get scholarships and bursaries. Okay, but you won't experience that in grade 10 yet, because you still got to go through grade 11 and 12, right? But grade 12, it's right there. Same thing at first year or at the university level. If you really do well at the university level, all of a sudden the world opens up to you, because now all these companies want to hire you, right? So that's why I've picked these two areas, the grade 12s and the university levels. And to me, those are really high leveraging points, because you nail those, then everything else starts to blossom. So hopefully I answered your question. I know it's a little bit in depth, but the reason I'm being in depth because I want to make sure that those other people who are watching, they have a clear idea in terms of what I'm looking for.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Shagufe, did you have any questions? If you don't, that's cool too.
No, I've thoroughly enjoyed this session. I'm definitely considering being one of your students per se, because I know that I do need some guidance, and I don't know everything. And so it's definitely, I may see you fairly soon.
Sure. Yeah, and just so you know, I don't know everything either. but together maybe we can know something.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And it's a pleasure to have you guys. And like I said, if you want to speak with me or you have any questions, check the comments section, and hopefully we can kind of interact a little bit more, because I know sometimes when you watch, maybe sometimes if people feel a little intimidated to actually speak with me, even though I don't know why. But if you do feel intimidated, then don't worry about it. We can have a one-on-one conversation, and we can chat about it. Okay, so take care and enjoy your day. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And by the way, if you have any questions on this session specifically, and you are not able to attend the live, then put it in the comments section, and then I'll respond, and then I'll tag you on it, and then you can actually get the response accordingly, and everybody else can also benefit from your question as well. Okay, so take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, and may the force be with you.
Thank you.
And what's the other one? That's from Star Wars. And what's the other one? From Star Trek. Live long and prosper.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, if you guys can do that, then I'll be very impressed. If anybody can do that, I'll be very impressed. There you go. Proper Vulcan style. Okay, good. Okay, guys, take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.